Our faculty speaker, chosen by the graduating class, is Professor Hemanth Gundavaram. Professor Gundavaram joined our faculty in 2014, and with Professor Rachel Rosenblum, co-founded our Immigrant Justice Clinic. Never has the founding of a clinic come at a more critical time for upholding the rule of law. In just over a year, the clinic has secured a grant of asylum for a woman and her son who feared for their lives in Mexico, secured the release of a client from an immigrant detention center, and published a report documenting the harmful effects of immigration enforcement at Massachusetts courthouses. Please welcome Professor Gundavaram to this podium.
Congratulations, class of 2019. It is quite an honor to be chosen as your faculty speaker. I was informed on the way up here that I've also been entered into the Democratic primary. I first wanted to give a quick shout out, do people still say that? To my parents who couldn't be here today, and my brother and sister-in-law, and my niece and nephew, Grishma and Varun. I am now the coolest uncle this side of Full House. I also wanted to send well wishes to my dear friend, Steve Subrin, and his wife, Joni. Steve was on the faculty here for 45 years. And is recovering from an illness and could not be here today. I know, I sound like I'm accepting an Academy Award. Okay. In my teaching career, I've never felt so connected to a graduating class. I did say that last year, but I do mean it. We've worked together on immigration projects in LSSC, LO5, and 3 and 4. We've learned legal writing together. Well, I already knew it, but some of you learned it. Most of you. Administrative law we took together, which was about the size of this graduating class. Independent studies, mentoring, and of course my clinic students who have worked so hard to help immigrants in our community receive asylum and start a new life. You are an amazing group of students. You should be so proud of yourself. I also want to give a round of applause to everybody who's here in your support today, family, friends. I almost said and loved ones, as if that's a different group. And let's also give a round of applause to both the faculty and the staff who I'm here representing today. A few months ago, I was asked to give this speech, and I approached the writing and giving of this speech the way that many of you approach a quarter at Northeastern. Why are you laughing already? I made a detailed plan and timeline and schedule, and last night I started writing, and I'm still not finished. So if this speech doesn't go well, please feel free to write whatever you want on my page 2. Apparently nobody reads those. The rest of the faculty does not know that. Now, the first thing I said when I was invited to give this speech was, I'm too young to give a faculty speech. And a few of you very helpfully told me that was not the case. Now, 15 years ago, when I was graduating law school, there was only one job I really wanted. I really mean this. I wanted to be a law professor. Now, I doubt many of you want to be a law professor. I once asked a student, do you want to get into academia? She said no. I thought that was the end of the conversation. She said, it's like 3 years of law school, but forever. I thought that was the end of the conversation, and she said, it's literally my worst nightmare. But there is some job out there that you will love and that you will want. Now, this is a little dated, but there's a meme that says, find yourself a partner that looks at you the way that Joe Biden looks at Barack Obama. Well, what I want for you is to find a job the way that I look at my job. And here are a few lessons that I learned along the way to get from where you are to where I am. Okay. This is the middle of the speech now. You know I'm big on road mapping. Okay. The first thing to finding a job you love is to realize the moment when you're doing something you love. Now, when I say this, I mean something legal related. Drinking at Punter's Pub does not count. You might love it. Well, now we can't go there. But for me, I didn't particularly like law school. But there are two things in law school I really loved, which were being a teaching assistant and participating in a clinic. You can imagine now that I'm running a clinic and teaching, that worked out okay. And if you haven't found what it is you love yet, you will. But when you do, you have to pay attention to it. If you want your dream job, you have to know what you love doing. When I first expressed to people that I wanted to be a law professor, a lot of them told me that it was unlikely. The rest told me that it was impossible. I obviously stopped talking to those people. But if you want your dream job, you have to ignore the critics. And the critic you have to ignore the most is your own self. We all have self-doubts, and they can get in the way of getting to the accomplishments that we deserve. So I made a plan. I started as an adjunct instructor teaching legal writing at night. It paid terribly, it was a ton of work, and I had to balance it with my full-time job at a law firm. But I kept it up year after year. If you want your dream job, you have to put in the extra effort. So I was an adjunct for 7 years. That was 14 straight semesters of traveling. Well, I can't say the name of the school. Daniel Medwed does not let me say that school out loud. My plan was to build a better resume and then eventually apply to a full-time teaching job. But eventually can be the death of your dreams. If you want your dream job, you have to reach for it sometimes before you think you're ready. So finally, after 7 years, I applied and I received some offers. I left a cushy job at the First Circuit and accepted a teaching fellowship. It was for 1 year, and then I'd be left with no job after that. If you want your dream job, sometimes you have to take some risks. So my fellowship was ending, and I didn't have a job lined up. In early January, during a blizzard, there was an annual law professor conference in New York. In case you're wondering, a law professor conference during a blizzard is as exciting as it sounds. But I went. If you want your dream job, sometimes you have to show up to things you don't want to go to. So 3 days of the conference pass, nothing works out for me. And one day, or the last day, I am at the Starbucks in the hotel, and I see Professor Wendy Parmet of Northeastern Law School having coffee alone. I had met her once before, so I had an internal debate. Do I talk to her? Is this going to be awkward? What would I even say? I know, I'm making this sound like a romantic comedy. But I approached her, and she remembered me. And the way Wendy gets right down to business, she said, there's a job in our LSSC program that you should apply for. If you want your dream job, sometimes you have to network. So I got the job, and here I was at Northeastern finally, a full-time professor. I had worked hard, ignored doubts, took risks, showed up, networked. That should have been it, but I wanted something more. I wanted to run an immigration clinic. So for years, every chance I got, I mentioned to whoever would listen, and often to those who wouldn't, that our school needed an immigration clinic. Then after the Muslim ban 2 years ago, Northeastern rose to the challenge, and thanks to many people, including President Aoun, Provost Bean, Jeremy Paul, Dick Daynard, and of course Rachel Rosenblum. I can't believe I messed up her name. It's like my best friend. And you, the students who rallied for it and embraced it, we started the immigration clinic 2 years ago. If you want your dream job, you have to be persistent. Now, I know Dean Hackney and everybody who's here with you, your family and friends in the audience, are thinking, I really don't think he needs to tell a Northeastern law student that they need to be more persistent. So that's how I got from here to there. And to this day, other than when I'm at a faculty meeting, my job does not feel like work. Sorry. What's their reaction? Tell me. Okay, I'm getting to the end. Now this is a third part. I can feel Dean Harper saying, "Wrap it up, Gundavaram." I want to end quickly by talking about the degree you're about to receive. Growing up in an Indian family, there's being a doctor, and then there's everything else. A lot of it, beyond the prestige, comes from the fact that medicine is a profession of life and death. Now, recently, my father was ill and in the hospital. He's still there now. He's doing better, but at the time, he was getting worse, and nobody really knew why. I felt very desperate and confused. Every time a doctor came to his room, we were hoping for answers, and everything they said, everything they did, it mattered to us. We could tell which doctors cared and which didn't. A comforting glance, a hand on a shoulder. We could tell who was thinking about his case throughout the day, at lunch, once they left work, and who wasn't. We could tell who had prepared and walked in knowing his whole medical history and who hadn't. And to us, all of it mattered. Now, around that time at the immigration clinic, 3 of you students who are graduating were working on 3 cases. A tough-as-nails political activist, an incredibly kind man persecuted because of his sexual orientation. He was granted asylum recently. And the third, a brave domestic violence survivor. And after all these years, shuttling back and forth between the hospital and the clinic, it truly occurred to me that our work as lawyers can be about life and death as much as any doctor. Immigration, housing, employment, benefits, domestic violence, criminal justice, prisoners' rights, workers' rights, healthcare. For your clients, it is life and death. Every minute you're working on their case and every interaction that you have with them, it all matters. And they'll know, too, who is prepared and who isn't, who cares and who doesn't, and they'll hang on every word you say for help, for hope, for answers. So don't take what's happening today lightly. When you get on the stage, 2 things will happen. A hood will be draped over your shoulders, and a rolled-up diploma will be handed to you. Don't let that moment pass without reflection. What will be draped over your shoulders is responsibility, and what will be handed to you is power. But we know in this world and others that the thing about responsibility is that it can be ignored and power can be misused. I know you all know this because you watch Game of Thrones. But I'm not worried. After teaching you for 3 years, I know you will take that responsibility with seriousness and purpose, and you will use that power to help and empower others. I know you will be Starks and not Lannisters. Watch the show if you haven't. What are you waiting for? I speak for everyone on this stage when I tell you, while we say goodbye to you with sadness, we do so also with excitement. Excitement to unleash you upon the world. It needs you more than ever. It has been my honor to teach you. You have a friend and a mentor for life. Thank you. Congratulations.